It's Spoilerin time, folks, and this is the show where we like to talk about the shows we've watched. Our other show, Cordkillers, helps us figure out how to find all this stuff and watch it these days. And then once we watched it, we've come here to talk about it. This week, we'll be talking about Hannibal, Season 1, Episode 4, The Mandalorian, Season 2, Episode 6, and the season finale of Fargo, Season 4, Episode 11. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
Hey, man. Dude, so let's just jump right into Fargo, I guess.
Fargo, Season 4, Episode 11, Storia Americana. Josto gets revenge, Orietta comes clean, and Ebel teaches Loy a lesson about business.
First thing that I don't. You go first. I don't know.
I'm still befuddled by this description, which doesn't really describe the show much at all. Although we do see that Ethelrita does get the business back, right? She wins in the end. So our perspective into this story is victorious. We see that. If you think, as I have, that there are two bad gangs and one has been slightly worse, Josto's gang definitely gets the worst of it. And Josto, I guess, gets the worst of it. He is betrayed and shot down because they blame him for something he did do. And something he didn't do. They think he killed Gaetano when he didn't. We know it was an accident. And then Loy is undercut as well by making a deal with the Italian gang under its new leadership, and then being told, like, you have no leverage over us. We're a nationwide organization. See you later. Leaving us with the implication that Satchel ends up to grow up to be Mike Milligan from a previous season of Fargo.
Yeah. So I guess I'm glad you remembered the name of that character, but it was definitely like I had to back it up to put in context to make sure it was a 1970s car. I'm like, I think they're saying he's that guy. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, and there's a Variety article where they interview Noah Hawley, and he confirms. He's like, yeah. The idea is that Satchel survives, has to change his name, ends up with no other options, and joins in with the gang in Kansas City and changes his name to Mike Milligan in honor of Rabbi Milligan, who took good care of him.
Oh, that's nice. How can I put it? There's no such thing as any bad Fargo. There are no bad seasons of Fargo. There are only least favorite awesome seasons.
Less awesome than other episodes /
least
seasons.
Awesome finales.
Yeah.
Like the opening. Get it? Let's show all the characters that died. Let's remind ourselves of just how far we've come. Look at all the different stories that you had. Great. Outside of that, kind of no surprises, no deep satisfaction, no comeuppance to people who I was really shaking my fist at, hoping they were going to get it. It was just sad for everyone. And then, we knew that the chaos vector, the wild card, was, she's got to show up at some point, and then here we are at the end of the movie, and or the end of this series, and it's even that sort of lacked bite. It was I don't know. I don't like saying anything less than highest praise for this show. So yeah, I just don't have much to say about this show. Then
I agree with you for different reasons, I think, in part, but I agree with you that this is not the most awesome season of Fargo. I would never tell someone to start with this season of Fargo, because theoretically you could watch any season of Fargo since they're all sort of independent, even though they're intertwined and they're out of chronological order. But this wouldn't be the most compelling one. I still enjoyed it, but I'm not sure still how much I enjoyed it because I've already enjoyed Fargo. And I enjoyed living in this. There's some highlights. I thought Chris Rock was incredible. I thought the sets and the periodness of it was great. I love Ethelrita, and that is one piece of satisfaction I did get from the end, was seeing her win, seeing a good person win and get the funeral home back and all of that. I think there was a little bit of a shadow of a hint of satisfaction that Orietta got her comeuppance, but I didn't really hate her. They never really built me to hate her so much. I hated her more in the early part when she was being really bad to Ethelrita than I did by the end when she was, just sort of powerless. And so it's kind of hard to punch down at her at that point because you knew she deserved it. But
she was obviously a broken human being.
Yeah.
And so as a result, it's like I got no more satisfaction of watching her get shot than I would a rabid dog. It's like
right.
There's nothing great about any of this.
No. And then, like you say, I don't have a problem with the twist on Josto. I thought was good. The twist on Loy, where they're like, "Yeah, you got no leverage," and I'm like, "Oh, I should have seen that coming." But they weren't surprising. They weren't shocking twists. They all made sense.
Yeah, and I think that in previous, and this is an unfair thing because everything should be based on its own merit. Yes, it's a gorgeous show. Loved the standalone episode of the rabbi and in Satchel. I don't know. Normally, I think we get some deeply satisfying surprise moments, and there were surprise moments, but none of them very deeply satisfying. I almost wouldn't have minded. Did you saw the haunting spirit thing in the reflection of the mirror that Orietta sees over her shoulder?
I missed that.
Yeah. It was very, very subtle, and I was hoping they would do something a little bit more because remember she experiences the chill and hears the creaky sounds and stuff. She looks at herself in the reflection and sees the spirit over her shoulder. So there were brief moments that I liked, but look.
I think for me, I would call almost all the other seasons of Fargo A++, if not A+, and this one was an A.
Yeah. It's like Bond ratings, where it's like nobody gets a B. If you get a B, you're really screwed up.
Yeah, it would be inconceivable for me to look at a Fargo season and say, "Oh yeah, that was a B," because this was good. This was a really good show.
Yeah,
it just wasn't the best Fargo that we've seen.
Yeah.
But I think it rose to some great heights. I think it told some stories it couldn't have told in any other way. I like showing the provincialness of a Kansas City gang in the 50s, something you don't think about now. How back, before communication and travel was even as widespread as it is now, you could have more influence, and Kansas City was more of a city than sometimes these cities feel like these days. But then they show the future by saying, "Hey, we're a nationwide, system. If you're not a nationwide system, times are changing. We can drive and fly now." So I like that, and I like their treatment of the evolution of racial tensions across the ages. But yeah, overall, it was not the wow, I would never have conceived of this story kind of feeling that I may have gotten with other seasons.
So Fargo previous seasons, I think there's been kind of a core group of, let's say, maybe one hand, fingers and thumb of kind of main people that you really come to know. This one seemed to break from its pattern. I almost got like a The Wire vibe, where it's a massive sprawling ensemble cast. But in the case of The Wire, the main character was Baltimore, and each season, focusing on a different aspect of it. Whereas I never felt like I saw, the main character outside of swapping youngest children, I can't tell you much about the organized crime in Kansas City that I didn't suspect going into it.
I wonder if it's because of the setup. Because when you're saying that, I'm thinking, okay, we had our main family, and they were the funeral home family, and they had their bad elements, Swanee and the aunt, but they were a little better than our main family usually is. They were a little purer than our main family usually is.
They never faced temptation.
It was only that through the aunt that they faced any temptation, and then they gave in to Loy for the money, but it wasn't because they were greedy so much as just trying to get by.
Right.
They were very sympathetic, whereas others would have done something. They're like, yeah, that was letting your greed get the best of you, and now you're paying for it. They didn't deserve to have to pay for it, right? So you've got that aspect. The other aspect of the other Fargos is, and then there's a nearby bad element that has a worse element behind it, and that worse element comes from Kansas City or elsewhere, right? We had two big local bad elements that were well known going head to head. And while there was a worse element behind Josto's gang in New York played the part of Kansas City, it wasn't as mysterious or imposing as Kansas City is in the other seasons of Fargo.
Yeah, somehow the ruralness, you know what? That's a good point, because part of the charm, and who am I to tell Noah Hawley how to do Fargo? But so much of Fargo, the mystery has been anything that feels like big city crime in such a rural place. It's that juxtaposition that feels so unusual. But Kansas City is big enough that you would expect there to be some big city crime there. And so as a result,
especially in the 50s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a self-sufficient city, even more so back then. So yeah, I still liked it. I don't know why I'm saying it in a higher voice.
I always think of Justin's line. You could tell how true a thing is by how high their voice gets.
I liked it. I liked it very much. All right, so that is Fargo, season 4, episode 11. Let's talk The Mandalorian, season 2, episode 6. As usual, I've talked a lot about this on Let's Talk About Star Wars, Brian, so I want to give you the first crack.
Man, very late Saturday night. I came in because I was up hanging out with Andrew Heaton, who had gotten into town, and so the family had already watched The Mandalorian. I just wanted to at least start it, and then I drifted off to sleep, and shut it down only a few minutes in, and the next morning, I kid you not, Tom, I woke up and asked my family, "Did I dream that Boba Fett was an overweight middle-aged man?" and they're like, "No, it was Jango Fett." Well, it was a clone of Jango Fett, and I'm like, they're all clones. Wait,
that's Boba.
Yeah. And then I go back and watch it, and I was like, Boba Fett is Varys. I mean, look, nobody's under any responsibility to keep themselves fit and trim on the off chance that 20 years after playing a role, they may get called back to play the role again. But I would have thought Boba Fett would have been like this supernatural, immortal, perfectly lithe, always perfect character.
Not what I was expecting to hear. Of all the criticisms I could have heard levied, I would not have predicted. Thought Boba Fett actor was out of shape.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a surprise to these eyes.
Because I think of Temuera Morrison's portrayal in this episode as exceptionally impressive because of the way he fights with the gaffy stick, and some of the stunts and the badass tone of voice, which is that classic Jango Fett, Boba Fett clone trooper voice. I did not pay attention to his gut.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'm just a bad person.
No. That's not my implication. It's just that didn't strike me. So I guess what I'm getting at is none of that other stuff balanced that out.
Yes, we saw significant advancements. That was kind of neat that we were talking about exactly this plot line possibly happening, and then it happened that exact episode. I would have liked. So I wish I was more scared for Grogu in his situation. I thought it was
right because Din keeps telling him, like, we need to go, and it's like he's fine. You're the one in danger, not him. He's got that force thing.
And unfortunately, that carries on as he's imprisoned, right? And so far, his imprisonment has looked an awful lot like him playing with ragdoll physics, slamming stormtroopers around like they're playthings. Like, I don't feel particularly scared for him at all. And maybe they're saving that to give us some grit later on.
Well, sure. Also, you don't want the child to be in the hands of the Empire because they're not going to treat him well. It doesn't matter if he's slamming some stormtroopers around. Obviously, Moff Gideon threatens him with a laser sword, and it's like, you can't keep it up, can you? It tires you out. Plus, I got a laser sword, so I'm going to get the top. My fear was never that they would hurt him because they want to keep him alive. They would never that they were going to kill him. It's that he is now in an unhappy situation where he is going to be exploited and no longer free to grow. We saw how traumatized he was when he was first saved and how much growth he's had, and now he's back in prison.
We are certainly told that an unpleasant future awaits Grogu, but like back to
and also shown that he was experimented on in the past, and that he like couldn't even talk when they first got him, and now he started to loosen up and pay more attention, and he's starting to even learn how to use his force powers. Like I think that's been demonstrated.
All things that did not happen in this episode, and in an episode where a major plot point is like
they were building up to this episode, right? So I don't want, after knowing all of that, I don't want him to go back to the Empire that didn't treat him well. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. I was hungry for. I would love to viscerally feel afraid for him, and of all of his adventures after having been captured, he gets baby talked to by what's his name, and flings around some stormtroopers, and again. Logically, I understand that you're probably, of all the things to be, a prisoner of the Empire is not a good one. I would have liked to have been made afraid for him. Gideon, thank you very much, Ken from Chicago.
Yeah. Okay. We just disagree on that, because I'm definitely afraid of him based on everything we've learned about him going up to now. Good action scenes? No, it doesn't sound like you dug this episode very much.
And I wish I could. It's all the ingredients are there. Like I probably should have felt more when they blew up the freaking ship that has been, a major character in the whole.
And that we have fought to keep together, like with baling wire and glue and stick and fixed twice, and it's been the home where Mando and the child. Nothing. Huh?
Yeah, and I guess maybe. And it's so weird because I rewatched last week's episode, and it's such a great standalone episode. Like everything felt right and visceral about it. The betrayal that this forest planet is now a desiccated, dust-covered corpse. The guerrilla warfare of this lone Jedi, and even if you have no idea what a Grand Admiral Thrawn is, she's got a MacGuffin that she's hunting. Like I felt all of that. I felt the battle at the end. I felt the tension between the Mandalorian and whoever her henchman was. In this case. It was a lot of hard reset buttons that felt to me that they needed to press it because to set up the next thing. Like they had to do the beacon thing and they had to do the capture. And I don't know. I thought the execution. Look, there's no bad Mandalorians so far. There's only some least best Mandalorians.
No, I entirely disagree with you. I felt this episode quite a bit. I felt everything was motivated and everything was fit to purpose and advance the story. So we just have different takeaways from this, because I thought we wouldn't get to this planet and see the force powers at work until the end. So I was surprised.
I think that's part of it is that maybe it moved too fast for my expectations, which is weird because
I was surprised that we started there, but I love that we didn't see it. We saw our POV stayed with Din Djarin. It stayed with Mando. We did not see what was going on with the child except from the outside. I love that we started with the Mandalorian sort of talking himself into, once we find the Jedi, I'm going to have to give you up. Okay. He's not talking to Grogu when he says that. He's talking to himself, kind of demonstrating how much of a bond that he has created. I love that he meets Boba Fett, and Boba Fett says like, "Hey, that's my armor. I can prove it." And we get a little pivot where you think the threat is going to be Fennec and Boba Fett, but in fact, the threat is the Empire, and they have to team up. But I love the whole thing. I thought it was a strong episode.
Yeah, I guess maybe whatever my Star Wars sense are or sensibilities are with the Mandalorian, this one felt a lot closer to the one that Carl Weathers directed. That I also had beef that I couldn't explain.
You mean the one where they try to steal stuff from the outpost?
From the tiny Death Star, and they do like by the numbers that was and also had everything that you would possibly want, and to me it felt like just too much of everything, and I think that's sort of what And
Yeah, because I didn't love that episode as much either, but I did love this one. I thought it was great, and it felt almost like a penultimate episode rather than what it is, which is a penultimate episode.
it's
pre-penultimate.
Pre-penultimate. Ooh, I like that. Yeah, and you know, of course, I'm still on board. It's the greatest show, and yes, I'm the terrible person for being surprised that Boba Fett was not as fit as I had imagined him.
I don't think you need to call yourself a terrible person, Brian. It's just you focused on something differently than I did.
I just was surprised, was all.
Because you're not wrong. That's the part. As soon as you said it, I'm like, oh yeah, I hadn't actually thought about that. So, yeah. You know what? Boba Fett has been around for a while at this point.
Yeah, and yeah, and yes,
and he's sticking. He's just hanging out on Tatooine, going to the cantina.
You know what I think? I think they could have. I think I wouldn't be hung up on it if they had done the address and dismiss thing. And we've talked about this before in advertising. All you got to do is say something that indicates that someone else is thinking of it, and then say, "Don't worry about it."
Although, if they had, I would have thought about it, and I didn't think about it until you said it. So that would have had the reverse effect on me.
That's
interesting.
I would have
started thinking about it if you had been sitting there and pointed it out, I would have thought about it the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go. That is The Mandalorian, episode 6 of season 2. Let's get to Hannibal, season 1, episode 4, or eggs, because everyone's eating a lot of eggs. This is back to a monster of the week. We have a little bit of continuance with the relationship of Will Graham and Hannibal Lecter and Abigail Hobbs. But in the foreground is an unrelated case of Molly Shannon stealing children and then teaching them to go back and kill their parents and siblings.
Bold casting choice to take somebody who's so inherently funny, and luckily she nails it. I thought she is sufficiently mothering and sinister in a weird, creepy way.
That's how you get Tom Hanks, right? You take a comedian, put him in a serious role.
Yeah, so was it an illusion, or did the monster of the week is the monster of the week getting crowded out by more? Like, it just felt like there wasn't enough time for me to fully buy in on the monster of the week story.
Yeah, maybe. Because last week I thought we were done with monster of the week. I thought, we're gonna go down the Abigail Hobbs road, and this week I was happier when we were going down the Abigail Hobbs road. I liked this monster of the week story, actually. I thought it was interesting, but I think you're right. It did get compressed a little bit, maybe.
Well, and because I think there's an interesting story there of how does somebody so psychologically break someone else's children that gets them to re-identify with her family or whatever. Maybe it's a case of, I don't know. I just wish there was more meat for me to soak.
It's also very likely that this is the next case we're going to focus on for a minute, right? Because they made a lot. They really went out of their way to say, well, Shannon is, the mother figure here, but there's something with the older boy too.
Yeah.
And I think that this is the start of another couple of episodes that we focus on this, as would be my guess.
That's interesting. I did not get that sense. I thought this was one and done because they caught her and that was the end of it. But now that you've pointed out that bit of it, you may be right.
You brought up, Bryce, that this one was delayed, or
this I guess did not air on its normally scheduled time because this was the week that the Sandy Hook shooting happened, so it did not air in America on
the
that
idea
week.
of kids and guns. Yeah.
But I thought this was you're right. I thought this was a very fast episode, much the way I thought maybe the first episode was a little fast, in that we didn't have any time to decompress after. The way that these episodes are written, there's not a lot of decompression at the end of them. And it seems like they're pushing those on into continuing plot lines. But if it means we can find out a little bit more about what is going on in the head of either Molly Shannon's character or the older boy, that would be cool, because I think that's part of the show is diving into the the thoughts of these murderers, these psychopaths.
Did you like, first of all, you are definitely right from last week when we were talking about that 70-30 split on whether or not we thought what's her name was already up to some killing. It very much looks like Hannibal's trying to mold her into a killer, and it seems like the first step is to get her to re-identify, which again...
to get her high on shrooms and then pretend she has a new family that Hannibal is the dad of.
Which, by the way, I don't mind. Maybe that's part of it, is that directly parallels the Monster of the Week. Because that's exactly what the exact thing that I was saying I wish I got more of is quite literally we're seeing the beginnings of with Hannibal. So,
right. When he like manipulated Dr. Bloom by knowing she would get angry at what he did and then making her sit down and bicker with him like a family to trigger Abigail to identify them as mother and father. I was like, that was a nice piece of scene setting. I like the way that worked.
Yeah. So maybe this is one that later, as we get more context, I'll be really glad for the balance that was. But at the time of consumption, it did feel off, but almost certainly show's been right every other time, so I assume they got a reason for all this.
I will say, I think it's a good sign that I actually ended up wanting more of both storylines. I either wanted this to be more of the Abigail Hannibal storyline or more of the Monster of the Week, and that's not a bad thing. That means I liked what they were doing with them.
Yeah.
44 minutes feels very tight. I don't know. I feel like with streaming
maybe
stuff,
that's part of what we're feeling, Brian.
Oh, it's just how short it was?
Because it's network. It's a network.
Yeah, we're so used to Netflix HBO time now, where it's like take as long as you want to tell the story.
Man, I could have sworn somebody sent us a warning saying, "Hey, heads up! These came out as webisodes or something around
this episode did
the whole thing, or this was several webisodes.
I believe just this episode did because of that airing discrepancy.
Oh, right, because they didn't air it in the US, so they put webisodes out to fill in the gaps for you about the Abigail stuff, is the way I understood it. So that when the next episode showed up, if you'd watched the webisodes, you'd understand that Hannibal got her high on shrooms.
Got it. Okay, I see. All right, now I understand.
Yeah. Right. Anything else on this episode?
Nope, continues to be good.
Yep. Agreed. That is Hannibal season 1, episode 4. All right, folks, that is it for this episode of Spoilerin Time. Next week, we have no more Fargo, right?
Yeah,
that's correct. That is a misprint.
So we will tune into After Talk if you're a patron to find out what we're going to watch. Mandalorian season 2, episode 7, and Hannibal season 1, episode 5. Thanks for supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cordkillers. We'll spoil you again next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.